Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to my garden. If you don't know me already, my name is Kiera. Feel free to call me Q. And today is fertilizing day. And so in this wheelbarrow behind me, I have all the stuff that we use to fertilize our different berry bushes and fruit trees and all of that kind of stuff. And so I thought I'd take you along with me today and just kind of show you, first of all, what we use and how we go about it. So, spoiler alert, I really just follow the instructions on the bag. But when I was first starting out gardening, this was something that I didn't really know where to start or how to go about it. And so I thought it'd be fun to just kind of take you along with me and just show you how we do things here. Specifically, how we're doing things this year. It always changes a little bit. In the past, we've kind of fertilized sparingly here and there. But this year, because we're trying to have a bunch of stuff that we're establishing, or we have a bunch of stuff that we're establishing or bringing back to health, I really do want to be on top of the fertilizing schedule for this year. So that being said, a lot of the things that we have here and a lot of the instructions on the bag say to do it about once a month. And so my goal is to do it at the beginning of every month, mostly so I remember. So my goal is to do all the fertilizing the first week of every month, if that's what the directions say. But yeah, I'll take you along with me and show you how we do it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to fertilize is our 2 green stalks. And so this will actually be the first time that I fertilize these at all, since we planted them, I want to say about a month and a half ago. And so this one here has a bunch of strawberries in it that we brought with us from our old house. And so I kind of separated those out and planted them all in there. And then this one has a lot of like leafy things, more like fall, winter, spring things for us. And so it's a lot of like spinaches and cilantros and purple bok choy, stuff like that. And so what I'm going to use for those two is this liquid fertilizer. It's this EB Stone Organics fish emulsion with kelp. This is the same thing I use for all of my seedlings. And I'm going to use this because the way you water the green stalks is you just pour water in the very top of the, it's kind of like a bowl up there. And so the liquid fertilizer works really well for this, just because you pour it into, mix it in with the water, and then just pour it right in. So it's super easy. It's not one of the ones that has to kind of dissolve first like the other fertilizers that we have. So I'm going to do that. Now, this one is a 4-1-1. I think the order is nitrogen. Oh no, now I'm blanking. Nitrogen, potassium, and potash, I think. If I have that wrong, I'm going to put it on the screen, mostly so that I know the order. But it tells you kind of like the ratios on all of them. And here you go, if you can see that 4-1-1 there. It tells you all of the ratios on all of the fertilizers that you have, and the ratios are basically specific for different kinds of plants and stuff like that. So this isn't a super strong one, and that's why we use it for our seedlings and stuff like that, because we want something that's just kind of light. And with these containers, when I planted them, there was compost in the potting soil that I used, and so they might not even need it right now. This is mostly just to get them on the schedule with everything else. Now, the thing I do want to say about all fertilizers is when you start out, like me, you might think, oh, it says to put this much in it, and so maybe I'll double it, or kind of like a more is better kind of deal. More is not better when it comes to fertilizer. If you do more than the instructions recommend, you can burn your plants. You can give them a lot of nutrients that they don't need. You can also kill your plants just putting way too much fertilizer on them, because there's only so much that they can absorb at a time. And so with this, like with all of these, they make it really easy. Just follow the instructions on the back. And for most of them, they also kind of break it up on based on what you're trying to fertilize. So for this one, it has a general dilution date. It has instructions for camellias, azaleas, rhododendrons. I can never say that. Rhododendrons and similar acid-loving plants. Roses, fuchsias, shrubs, trees, tubers, begonias, vegetables, tomatoes, berries, African violets, and then like there's a lawn one on there too. So just find whatever it is that you're actually trying to fertilize on the back and follow the instructions. It's the easiest way to go. So for our purposes here, I'm going to use the general dilution instructions. So the general instructions say 2 tablespoons per 1 gallon of water. And then I go down and look at the vegetables, tomatoes, and berries. And that one just says feed monthly. During the growing season, use 1 gallon of the mixture per 20 feet row. So the 20 feet row thing doesn't really apply here. But what I have is a 2-gallon watering can. And so I'm going to go ahead and mix that up in the watering can and then just split it between these 2 towers here. Okay, we got the hardest one out of the way. So that one's always rough for me because it's always messy and it smells really bad because of the fish emulsion. So we do try to have as many organic things as possible. If you have already bought your fertilizer and you find out it's a synthetic one or something like that, which is basically just like, you know, chemicals they make in the lab, don't feel like you have to throw it out or anything like that. I don't want people to feel like if they don't have the exact same thing that I'm using, that it's wrong or anything like that. If it's what you have and it's safe for your plants, go ahead and use it. And, you know, do your research in the meantime. Decide if there's a different product that works that you'd like to try that might work better for you. What we did is we actually just went into our local garden center, the local nursery. It's a chain, but it's not like a big box store. It wasn't like a Home Depot or Lowe's or anything like that. But anyway, they're a really good resource for any questions that you have, any problems you're having with your plants. And so what we did, especially when we buy new plants, is we go in there and we say, hey, we're buying blueberries, you know, and what fertilizer would you recommend? And so we just kind of get their opinions and use what they recommend. So that can be a really great resource for you too if you have a local nursery or garden center nearby, something like that. Just go in and ask them, and they're usually like super nice about it, super friendly, especially for a beginner. We've asked all sorts of what you would call stupid questions and they've just been really sweet. So yeah, use what you have on hand. Eventually, what we would love to do is get to the point where we are mostly fertilizing with compost that we make here, vermicompost, like worm castings, more stuff like that. But we're not there yet. And so what we're doing is, you know, our halfway is to use the organic stuff. And so it all works out. We might also always supplement with other things like bone meal and blood meal and stuff like that, but we'll see. But anyway, that is the containers. So now let's move on to, I think the blackberries. They're right next to me. You see them growing behind me a little bit. And so let's do the blackberries next. All right, so behind me, you can see our blackberry patch. It goes all along the side of our little patio here, which we love. The blackberries that we got off of this last year were so good. So I'm really excited about this. For the blackberries, we actually have a couple of the products that we could use. I could use that fish emulsion that I just used. I prefer to use something like this just because this is one of the powdery ones and it's easier to put down, and since they both can be used, they both have instructions for how to do this. For berries, I'm just going to use this one instead just because it's easier. So for this one, it says apply 1 to 2 cups of fertilizer to the soil around the plants beginning when growth begins in the spring. So as you can see, we're a little bit late for that, but that's okay. And this one says repeat the application 2 or more times 8 weeks apart through the growing season. So this one will be used every other month instead of every month. So those are the instructions for berries and grapes. So I'm going to use these instructions for these blackberries, and I'm also going to use them for our grapevines. All right, how to get a new bag. So I'm going to follow the same instructions that we just did for our blackberries. I'm going to follow it for all of our grapevines here. And then after that, I'm going to use the same bag to do all of our citrus and fruit trees. So then I'll just follow the instructions for those. So now on to fruit trees. So this says for established fruit trees, peaches, apples, nectarines, etc., apply 2 cups of fertilizer for each inch of trunk diameter, up to a maximum of 8 cups of fertilizer for large established trees. And then this one says also divide the fertilizer into 3 applications, beginning when the trees begin to emerge from dormancy in the spring, which we did that one for the peach and the apricot, and then another when the fruit has set, and another immediately after harvest. So we have fruit setting on these, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I have a measure here, tape measure here. So this tree trunk is about 3 inches in diameter, and so what was that? 2 cups for each inch. So I'm going to put 6 cups around this tree. Next up is the citrus trees. So let's see what it says for this one. Young citrus trees should be fed lightly for the first several years. For newly planted trees, apply 1 cup of fertilizer to the soil around the planting hole. And so that's what I'm going to do for this little Meyer lemon tree. And then across the yard we have another, what is it? It's a lime tree. I don't remember what kind of lime tree, but we just planted those a couple months ago, and so I'm just going to put a cup around the planting hole for each one of those. And then for the bigger trees, so this one right here and the one next to it, it says for 2-year-old trees, which I don't know how old they are, feed beginning in January or February. We are past both of those dates. By applying 2 cups of fertilizer to the soil around the drip line. Feed 2 more times throughout the growing season at the same rate, about 8 weeks apart. And then it says feed 4-year-old trees and older using 3 cups of fertilizer starting in January or February, and repeat every 6 to 8 weeks. And so I think that both of the other trees are older than 4 years, but I'm not sure. I think what I'm going to do, just so that I don't fertilize them too much, is I'm going to use the instructions for the 2-year-old trees. Again, I think they're both bigger than that, but we don't know because we didn't plant them. And I'm still learning a lot about trees. So for the 2-year-old, it was the 2 cups of fertilizer around the drip line. So that's easy enough. All right, next up are 3 apple trees. So we had 2 Honeycrisp apple trees that came with the house, and then we went out and bought a Gala apple because we found out that you need a different variety of apple for the apples to actually flower and fruit. And last year the Honeycrisps both just kind of sat there and didn't do anything. Now, when we went to the garden center to ask for help, they did tell us that the Honeycrisp apple is supposed to be one that you don't need another apple variety to cross-pollinate it, but everything we looked at online said you did. So we just went ahead and got another apple tree. I mean, we would love to have all of the apples from these trees. This one didn't get moved. So this one is exactly where it was when we moved into the house. The other one, which was back behind me over here, we moved to the side of the fence over there, and then we planted the Gala apple along that same fence line over there. Now, looking at the bag for the instructions, under all of the different types of instructions, this one doesn't have one for newly planted fruit trees. It only has the instructions for the established fruit trees where it mentions apples as a type. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to follow the instructions that they had down here for newly planted citrus trees, because it is less than what they say for the established fruit trees. And so I figure it's better to go under than over. And so I'm going to go ahead and follow those instructions. This one, I don't think this one, I think they probably planted it last year, maybe the fall before we moved in, if anything. It's still very, very new looking. And so I'm going to go ahead and do the instructions for, newly planted trees for all 3 of the apple trees, which will be 1 cup of fertilizer around the planting hole for each one. So this is the first time that we've fertilized everything. Like I said in the past, we've been kind of like spotty about it, but we planted a bunch of new fruit trees this year, and we're fertilizing all of the old ones by the instructions. And I mean, these bags go pretty fast. This is one that wasn't even the first one we used today. I used about half a bag of something else, or of the other one. And yeah, we just opened this and it's already go down to here. So this goes very, very quick. Okay, home stretch. So the last thing that we are going to fertilize today is all of the blueberry plants. So for this one, we are going to use this azalea mix, or this azalea fertilizer. The citrus and fruit tree fertilizer that I was using before, it did have berries listed on the bag, and so we used that one, you remember, for the blackberries. The reason why I'm using this one was it was recommended to us by our garden center to use something for azaleas because blueberries like more acidic soil. And so this one is going to help with that pH acidity that blueberries really like. So that's why we're going to use this one instead of the other one that lists berries also. So for this one, what it says for general instructions, there's no like blueberry specific instructions on the back of this one. It's mostly about flowers, but it does have this little chart on the back about plant height and then how much to apply. So you see this little chart here. And so this says for a plant height or width, that's about 1 to 2 feet. It says a quarter cup to 1/3 of a cup, 2.5 to 3 feet, a half a cup, so on. Most of these plants, some of them do go up to 2 feet, but for the most part, most of the growth is about a foot. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a quarter cup on each one. And so I have this half cup that I've been using for everything. So I'm just going to put half of one of these on each one of the blueberry plants. We have 7 of these, and so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oh, all right, we did it. We got everything fertilized. That took a really long time, but I think it's going to be really worth it, especially getting everything kind of off to a good start at the beginning of the season. I'm really happy with it. So we'll see how the plants do from here on out. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just water in all of the fertilizer, all of this kind of like gritty stuff. I'm going to water it in really, really well, mostly so that it can get to the roots of the plants and stuff like that, but also because our dog really likes to eat it. And despite his sensitive stomach, he still eats it. And so I want to water it in really well. What I'll do is the next couple days I will hand water all of these just to make sure I get more and more of it worked into the soil. And then this morning I did see some more rain coming up in our forecast now, so maybe the rain will help push it through more. But for the most part, I want to make sure that it's getting into the soil and my dog's not eating it. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me today and going around and fertilizing the garden with me. I hope that this helps you to kind of just see our process and see what we do at the beginning of the year, and also to just encourage you to get started on your own. It does take a little bit, but this isn't something we have to do all the time. Hopefully it's going to really help with just the overall success of all of our plants, especially since we have so many berry bushes and, you know, new fruit trees that we're trying to get established. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and happy growing. I'll see you next time.